Let's go.
Welcome in, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is the Line Movers Network College Football Podcast. As usual, love the shirt, as usual. With us every week, the college football knowledge of knowledge. He does it all. Ian Robbins. Welcome in, Ian.
Hey, thanks. Another week. More questions, no answers. Hey, college football heats up now. Best time of year.
Awesome. And back again by popular demand. He is the man. Tudor, thanks for coming back, buddy.
Yeah, I had nothing else to do. I didn't win $1 billion yesterday, so I guess this is the next best thing. And I'm surprised you keep inviting me after I keep beating you in fantasy every week. But thanks for inviting me, and a huge shout out to the Michigan State Spartans football team. They showed a lot of fight on Saturday after the game in the tunnel, of course. Go Blue!
There he goes, getting his opening shots in at me and Sparty Nation. Welcome in, like I said, everybody. This is the Line Movers Network College Football Podcast. Follow us or follow along with us on Twitter at _LM Network all year round for all your sports. Let's get right to it. We have a 4-pack of big game breakdowns. Let's start in the Big 12. Noon Eastern kickoff in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The Texas Tech Red Raiders are going in to TCU. The Horned Frogs are a perfect 8-0. Although they might have got slighted by the committee earlier. We'll get to that later. TCU at home, Ian, is 9.5-point favorite with a 70 total. What say you?
Yeah, this is so TCU. They keep coming. I thought last week was a super sloppy spot, and they just kept scoring out. It was close. It was tight. They got down early against West Virginia. Showed a lot of fight. I mean, going east out of there. One of the longer trips in the Big 12, and finding a way, especially at the end, and to not only win but cover that number. Salty and all, but yeah, TCU is interesting to me. Offense is great, no doubt. Max Duggan, phenomenal year. Truly just tough as nails. They've just stepped up to the challenge time after time after time, week after week, especially the last couple of weeks. My question is really, how long does it last? Now, Max Duggan looked a little bit injured last week. He didn't really run in the second half. Their other weapons certainly stepped up. West Virginia's defense is terrible. And can it keep up? And I'm kind of alluding to what I think here. Texas Tech really was bad last week. They've been pretty good. They've been one of the better, like, above average teams in the Big 12, but they were bad last week. Now, was this a look ahead spot? Maybe, because, they won their biggest game already in Texas. So they've already stepped up in class. This is a huge game. It's an in-state rival, of course. TCU just has their new first-year coach. Texas Tech would like to get back there. A team that used to be known for offense. Can they keep up? I think they play a little bit more defense than West Virginia, of course. So it's gonna be an interesting game to me. I think it stays in single digits. I think Texas Tech is gonna keep this game close. I think TCU is just playing with fire, and I think the loss is coming. Not a good for the Big 10 playoff hopes, or Big 12 playoff hopes, excuse me. Not good for the Big 12 playoff hopes. TCU will probably still win because they're still in a really good spot to make the conference title game. I just don't know how good they actually are, especially if they're not able to stop anybody. And I'm really interested to see how they're able to stop Texas Tech, or how they're actually play with Texas Tech. So I think Texas Tech's bounced back after that tough loss against Baylor. I think TCU continues to play closer games as they have been the last couple of weeks. And I like Texas Tech to cover the spread here, with, of course, the number going over the total because it's a TCU game.
Tudor, Red Raiders, Horned Frogs.
Yeah, I was going to mention this if we were going to talk about the playoffs, but I just got a feeling this year that the Big 12 is just like a bunch of TCUs. It's like 8 TCUs, and somebody happens to be winning every week, and there's upsets and whatnot. And TCU, the real TCU, seems to be winning. So I think that's what, when we talk about the playoff. I think that's why the Big 12 would be slighted, because basically the Big 12 is just a bunch of TCUs, and they don't look different to anybody. However, I do think they're going to be a little bit upset about this, about being slighted. I do think they make the playoff if they win out. I really do. But I do not see an upset brewing here. People might think they're looking headed to Texas. And they're actually, that line's already out. They're a 6-point favorite at Texas already. They've answered every challenge. They've answered being down point, good team on the road. I just don't think Texas Tech is in the top 5 of the challenges that they've had this year. Give me TCU by 2 touchdowns. Don't cover. 42-24.
Very good. Very good. Let's go to a couple of night games. Let's go to the SEC first. A 7 p.m. Eastern kickoff. Death Valley at night down in the bayou. Besides the past couple of years, this has always been the game of the year. CBS has always picked it for their afternoon slot. No mas, not this year. Alabama going into Death Valley, going into LSU. Alabama sitting at 7-1. They're right on the outside of that playoff picture looking in. If some of these teams, and they all start to play each other, if they're going to start to drop. Someone has to. Bama's ready to slide up if they can continue to win. Tudor, Alabama, 13.5-point favorite, total of 58 in LSU. What do you think?
How crazy is it when you see the schedule at the beginning of the year? This is the game you think is going to be the game. This is the game day game, and now maybe the third most important game on the slate. But here's also something you didn't think about a few weeks ago. LSU controls their own destiny to this SEC championship, and I can't believe I'm going to say this because I'm not really a Brian Kelly fan, but they have a playoff chance if they win out, which would include an Alabama win and either a Tennessee or a Georgia win. So how can you, even though they have 2 losses, how can you say no to the SEC champion, which the committee loves, right?
Yes, they do.
But the whole world is ready for Alabama to be out of the playoff picture, and especially the fans of Michigan, Ohio State, TCU, Clemson. But it doesn't work that way, right? We've seen this story before, and Alabama always gets back into the playoff. And it will start with a close win at Death Valley. It will be rocking, but Alabama will prevail. I do like LSU to cover, just like my pick last week. I picked all those underdogs to cover in those rival games. And I do like the over to hit pretty comfortably. 38-28 Alabama.
Very good. So Tudor's on LSU in the over. Ian, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of points that Tudor just said. One thing is Brian Kelly's got this team getting better, and I don't like Brian Kelly at all. I'm not a big fan of him, but this team is playing better. They had that they've had some weird losses this year. That first game against Florida State, they started out slow, and it was kind of just a weird game. And the Tennessee game, they were done. They fumbled to kick off. They were done in the first quarter before the game even started. They had no chance. I've always seen Tennessee just when they stomp on you, they do not let up. So those are the 2 losses. They've turned around. They've, run up against Ole Miss, run up against Florida on the road. They've done some really nice things coming back. So you got to give LSU some credit there. And this is a big thing. You mentioned waiting for Alabama to lose. Last year, I remember we're in a similar spot. And Alabama was going on the road against Auburn. Of course, a big rivalry game. And we talked about Bryce Young, on the road, and it was a slow game. They were just lucky to get out of that game and keep their playoff hopes alive to get to that SEC title game. And I see something similar here. There's 2 things that seem to have been hampering Nick Saban over the last couple of years. And this is, you got to nitpick, of course, when you talk about Nick Saban, but going on the road, facing a mobile quarterback. They just lost that game this year. Going on the road, facing a mobile quarterback. Well, they're going on the road to Death Valley at night, so that helps out. And they're facing a mobile quarterback who's gotten better. Jaden Daniels has had a fantastic season. He's gotten a lot better. that is very tough. Facing a team that can score with you, because not a lot of teams can score with Alabama, but they don't have Jameson Williams anymore. They don't have John Mechie. They don't have some of these guys that have been carrying them year after year. Brian Robinson last year. They don't have, Devontae Smith, Jalen Wall. They don't have those guys this year. Bryce Young is great, but those receivers are good, but they're not the same kind of offensive talent necessarily that were, multiple first round picks. And I don't know. I think they're in trouble. I really think they're in trouble this week. I think the combo of going on the road versus a mobile quarterback, it's been there. That's kind of been the kryptonite. That's the formula this week. It's a bad setup for Alabama, and I think it doesn't end well for them. I think they're the third best team, at least maybe the fourth best team in the SEC. I don't think they're in the top two anymore. And I think this win comes for LSU, biggest game of their season. Alabama's going to try to survive. Definitely see it within single digits. Definitely like that overcall. Great call there, Tudor. But I like the upset here. Alabama.
Wow.
Or outright, Jane Daniels is going to go off this week. And we'll see what happens after that.
Ian's on the Bayou Bengals outright. Wow. Tudor, you heard that, right? Okay. Mark it down, my guys, too, for the Bayou Bengals. Remember to follow Ian Robbins, my guy, all year round. Follow him on Twitter at ROBINSIAN. He's great in college football. You know that. You watch the podcast every week, but he's just as great in golf and other sports. Incredible sports mind. Follow him. He always responds, gets right back to you. Ask away. He's got some great takes and answers for you. We got another big game at night. 7:30 Eastern. We're going to South Bend, Indiana. The Clemson Tigers, the 8-0 Clemson Tigers. They got the 4 spot in the release playoff rankings earlier tonight. They're going in to Notre Dame. Notre Dame sitting at 5-3. They've had some good moments. They've had some weak moments. Clemson, and I have heard a lot of talk about this line smells from people all week. Clemson is a small 4-point favorite, a total 44.5. Tudor, what are you thinking?
I called the upset last week with Notre Dame over the pretenders of the Orangemen. I don't think Clemson is as good as advertised. They keep sliding by these games. It's time for them to lose and get out of the playoff discussion. I'm not really quite sure what happened in that Stanford game. But Notre Dame has a really good defense, and they seem to be a little bit better with Pine. South Bend's going to be rocking. Freeman's going to get his win, and a game-winning field goal and a low-scoring affair. Notre Dame 20-14. I'm kind of feeling this is the same thing as Ian is saying with the Alabama. I think this is going to get Clemson. I don't think they're ready for this.
Ian.
I'm really interested to see this game because Notre Dame has been an enigma all year. Bigger games that they're underdogs in or coming as an underdog or undervalued, underrated, they cover or win outright. Whether it's the Ohio State game in the beginning of the year, they've held them to the least amount of points they've scored. Last week, they ended up closing pick'em, but opened up an underdog. North Carolina, they were bet against. They ended up winning outright. But as a favorite, they've been terrible. Stanford, Marshall, awful this year. So what are they? Are they a team with talent that plays up, hits up for the big games, or are they just a middling team that can't really find themselves? And I've kind of believed in Clemson as the year has gone on. I'm not going to lose shit. The one question I'm going to have about this game, and I think we're going to get the answer in the first quarter, is what kind of leash does Dabo have with quarterback DJ? I'm not going to try to say his last name. He got benched last week. They kind of gave away that game against Syracuse. They were in control going in, fumble, 99-yard touchdown return. Syracuse goes up, gets life again. They were able to come back, got the benching, quarterback change, but it was really Will Shipley who brought him back in, that offensive talent. And the defense stepped up. So what kind of leash do we see with DJ? He was getting better. And all of a sudden he had some adversity. He certainly had some adversity before. It's not the first time he's going to play a game in South Bend too. We remember back a couple of years ago when he was a freshman, when he came in for Trevor Lawrence. So what kind of leash is he going to have? That's number one. Does he last the first quarter? Does Dabo make the switch to the highly regarded freshman quarterback? I don't know. One thing I know is Clemson's got a healthy defense. So how does Notre Dame score? Notre Dame's got one good player on offense. So they got a decent running game. Quarterback is not at the level that should be winning these games. Michael Mayer certainly is at the level that can play with anybody, but that's it. And Clemson's got a stud defense, right? They got players, they got talent, and they probably have the best running back on the field with Will Shipley. So will that win out? Will that be the difference? The line has kind of bounced around, open 5, went back to 3, now it's back up to 4. So kind of messing around a little bit with the line. I think it's be interesting in play game. I think if there's an early hook on DJ and he goes to the bench, Dabo doesn't really have confidence in that team. I bet Notre Dame live. I think if DJ steps up with the adversity, they come out first drive, score a touchdown. I think it's lights out. They win by 2 scores going away. I'm really interested to see how that game starts out. My gut tells me that DJ is going to step back or step up. I think they're going to win. I think that I've been believing in them all year. I think this is their game. I think they get this game. I think they kind of walk their way into the playoffs. But I'm really interested to see if they struggle early. I'm going the other way. I'm buying out immediately. But I definitely like the under. I don't know how Notre Dame's going to score more than 2 touchdowns. They can't score. You can't win. That's kind of how I see it.
Great stuff from Ian and the tutor. Great breakdown. The big game. We're going to go to the big game now, the one everyone is waiting for. I couldn't be more excited for this. This is going to be fantastic. 3:30 Eastern on CBS. Tennessee Volunteers, the number 1 ranked Tennessee Volunteers, are going between the hedges. They're going to Sanford Stadium to take on the national champion Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia and Tennessee coming in at a perfect 8-0. There is so much on the line here. The SEC conference, the division, the national championship, and the playoffs. Everything is here for both these teams. The winner is in an incredible spot going forward. The loser will not be done yet, but they're going to have a lot of work to do. Tennessee is getting 8 points in Athens. The total 66. Ian.
Well, it's funny, David, you say everything's on the line, but is everything on the line? If Tennessee loses, are they really done? I don't think so. I think Tennessee loses, that might actually be a little bit better for them.
Could be.
Not necessarily better for them, but I don't think this game means as much to them for the big title picture. Now, would they love to win the SEC East and get to the title game? Absolutely. That would make that into a home game for sure, because it's been a while for Tennessee. But I think they're okay. If they lose this game and win everything else, I think they're okay the way they look. But on that note, Georgia, they kind of, they're turning on early. They kind of stumbled in the middle last week against Florida. Florida gave them a punch back a little bit, and then they kind of took it at the end. And, Georgia came out, and they've just been chugging along. It's really hard for a national champion to back up a national championship season, especially when the same quarterback, because that target is massive. Now they're coming home to face Tennessee. In Tennessee's biggest game, Tennessee just keeps stepping up. Last week we saw was a look-ahead spot. Can Kentucky slow them down? Kentucky's a legit top 20 team, and they stomped them early and broke their will. They outscored Alabama. Hendon Hooker is the rightful favorite to win the Heisman Trophy this year. They get Cedric Tillman back on offense. They made plays on defense last week. What can they do against the NFL light defense of Georgia? And I think they're going to keep rolling. I don't know why. I just think Tennessee is going to keep rolling. I think this team is special. I think the relationship that Heupel and Hooker have is special. I think you see a type of offense come around every couple of years. We've seen it with Alabama a couple of years ago. We saw it with LSU a couple of years ago, and LSU was kind of steamrolling on ranked to beating everybody past the spread. And Tennessee's reminding me of that this year. I've heard a couple of people talk about that. I was thinking about it. I was like, yeah, you know what? They kind of do remind me of LSU last year. And then the defense kind of started stepping up a little bit. And maybe that was a turn for the defense last week. And I don't know why. I just think this Tennessee team is just special this year. I think, and I hate to say that. It pains me to say that as a kid. Talk about a Tennessee-Georgia game in a way of the 2 probably best teams in the country. Tennessee is rightfully number 1. They deserve to be number 1. Heupel deserves to be here as a coach. He definitely deserves to be here as a coach. And I just think the best player in the field is Hendon Hooker. it's going to be a great game. It's going to be a great chess match. One of the best defensive minds in Kirby Smart, one of the best offensive minds in Josh Heupel. I don't know why. I don't have a reason other than this team just seems different this year. And I think they win. And I think they go undefeated and become the favorites for the playoffs. Don't know why, just feel that way.
Great breakdown. That's as good as you'll hear all week anywhere. Tudor, what are you thinking?
Not so fast, Ian.
Ooh, pencil.
Yeah, I know why the voters put Tennessee 1 and Georgia 3. We'll get that later. But there's a reason why Georgia is favored in this game by quite a bit. And this is gonna be the best team that Tennessee Georgia's faced by far. I said that last week about Florida. Florida held them pretty close, right? They were right there, 8 points with almost in the end of third quarter. So we all know Tennessee's better than Florida. Probably maybe the best team in the country, like Ian think. I do see this game going to the end. I'm cautious about the spread. Georgia could easily get a pick six there at the end, or a field goal late in the game, ice the game. Georgia had 3 turnovers against Florida.
Yeah,
right.
All third quarter turning the ball over.
And Florida didn't have any, and they still won by 22, right? I mean, that was an ugly game, and they just smoked Georgia, right? Georgia's at home. This might be the biggest game in Tennessee history, and I just don't think they're going to be ready for it. As Ian said, they're the number 1 targets on their back, Heisman candidate, coach of the year, all the stuff just in my head screams, ooh, they're gonna, but like Ian said, it won't hurt them. They'll still be ranked in the top 4, and I think, and that's in the back of their head too. So I don't think Tennessee has anything working for them. They have a huge target on the back. Georgia needs to win this game after that ranking came out, and I think Tennessee might be coming in a little cocky, thinking they're this number 1. They're the shit, and I think Georgia beats them 35-27.
Great stuff. Ian on the Volunteers, Tudor on the Bulldogs. Let's get into a discussion here on the playoffs. The first round of rankings from the College Football Playoff Committee came out just about 2 hours ago, maybe 3 now. And then rattle off the top 10 and then let my guys take some shots, what they think was right, what they think is wrong, and what they whatever they want to say on it, whatever they see coming up. 10, LSU. I was actually thought this was way too high. Then Ian broke down the Alabama LSU game for us, and I started thinking, you know what, maybe they are right there. 9, USC. 8, Oregon. So that was the Pac-10 coming in at 8 and 9, Oregon and USC at 9. 7 was TCU. That is the lowest ranked undefeated team in the rankings. 6, Alabama with 1 loss. The highest rated 1-loss team, Alabama, was at 6. 5, Michigan. 4, Clemson. 3, Bulldogs of Georgia. 2, the Buckeyes. And number 1, as my guys just said, was the Volunteers. Ian, thoughts?
Yeah, I think the top 4 is pretty straightforward. I think we knew what to expect. Michigan's sitting there at 5. Clemson's got some better wins this year, but we know what's going to come down for Michigan, Ohio State. We know it's going to come down in that game. Maybe I highly doubt Illinois is going to have a chance at upsetting one of those 2 to spoil the party. But I think one of those 2 teams is in. I think even if there's a slip up there, just like last year, Michigan earned their way back in. I think both teams have breathing room to get in with 1 loss. I don't think they need to be undefeated to get in. I just can't see more than 2 SEC teams getting in. The Clemson's on a tightrope. They're basically saying, okay, you're 4. Nobody else in the ACC is around. You got to win out to get in. This is your game. You can't slip up. You got to really cement yourself there. TCU, all right, we'll rank you ahead of the Pac-12. You're still behind Alabama in our eyes. All right, TCU, we don't think that highly of you. If you're undefeated, we'll talk. We'll see what happens ahead of us because of those 5 of the 6 teams ahead of you all play each other in some form or fashion. So they'll figure it. There's a couple losses there to figure it out.
Bingo.
TCU is going to have to. They have no margin for error. Even if they avenge a loss in the title game, they have no margin for error.
I agree.
Okay, Alabama. I think they're going to be short-lived in here. I don't think they're going to get the same kind of look. Yeah, they're going to maybe have a chance, but they still got to deal with Ole Miss. They still got to deal with LSU. They still got to deal with either Georgia or Tennessee again. That is a lot. So they have some room to gain, but that I don't think they're not rated highly over the fact that Georgia and Tennessee are on the same side and only one team can make the title game after this week, the SEC title game. They're both sitting a lot better than Alabama would be. Alabama would have to win every game, which includes 3 potentially top 11 games. So they will earn their way in if they have to get there. I don't think they get there. We talked about Michigan, Ohio State. I think Michigan could lose this week. I don't think they're going to lose this week or next week or the week. I don't think they're going to lose, but they could lose and still make it. Ohio State could still lose and make it. As long as that one loss, as long as they win the last 2 games, they're fine. If they lose one game leading up to the last 2 games, they're both going to be fine. Georgia, Tennessee, we're going to see what happens this week. It's a blowout one way or the other. That might eliminate one team. I don't, right now they're tight. The loser's going to sit at 6. Basically, the loser's going to go to 6. And, Pac-12, what's the message Pac-12 gets? Utah or Oregon, USC. Oregon is in a weird spot sitting there with that loss to Georgia. They're obviously a better team. They're clearly a better team. And if they run the table and win 11 straight games, 12 straight games, including the title game after that, they probably deserve a shot to be there, depending what happens, depending if Clemson and TCU both lose. But it's going to be really hard if it's an argument between Oregon and Georgia, because Georgia has that win over them. It's a conference champion. We've seen that story before. It usually goes to the SEC. But if it's USC, who has a one point loss on the road where they still cover the spread, that might be a different story. Because USC, if they're still sitting there, number one, they're USC. Lincoln Riley's been in the playoffs before. Caleb Williams is something, and it's LA. So they might have a little bit more of an argument. So putting them there says, yeah, you got to play each other. You got to get another top 10 game in. Let's see what happens. LSU, Ole Miss sitting 10 and 11. That's kind of like, all right, whatever. And then everyone else is kind of just scrap that point. I don't think anyone beyond Ole Miss still technically has a chance because they have 1 loss and they still play Alabama and they control their own destiny. So, they could kind of see what happens there. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of expected. Thin rope for the ACC and the Big 12. 1 loss and done. SEC is going to shape itself out. I think the Big 10 has a little bit of leeway with Michigan and Ohio State. They're not on such a tight rope. If they both are undefeated, unfortunately, that game will be an elimination game. That's just kind of how it is. Unless there's a lot of losses coming in, unless every other team is 2 losses. But I would look out for USC. I would look out for USC down the road. I think if you want one long shot future bet outside of that, my future bet would be on USC. Very small stake, but I think that's the one team. When push comes to shove, I think they might have a case later on.
Tudor, playoff thoughts?
Is that a bet that's out there yet? The long shot, and I'm trying to look it up right now, because when you started mentioning that, I guess my long shot would be LSU, because I talked about that in my special, but I don't even see it there. Let me see. LSU is not even an option. Ole Miss is 2,500. No LSU. So that sucks. North Carolina had an option, not LSU. That doesn't make any sense at all. So I'll start with that. I can see between LSU and Ole Miss, either of them running the table, winning the SEC, they're in. No question about it. They're not going to say no to the SEC champion. That's not happening. SEC champion's getting in. So that's why I would put money on LSU or Ole Miss, a long shot to make the playoff.
So I got to make the playoff. No, but LSU 200-1 to win the national championship. Ole Miss 100-1. USC 60-1 to win the championship.
USC, I'm seeing Ian 7-1 to make the playoffs.
USC 7-1
USC
playoffs.
Yeah. Ian said they had a chance to slide in there with the one loss. So, Ian, you see USC getting a shot with one loss if they can run the table from here, beat UCLA, and then maybe Oregon in the Pac-10 title game.
Yeah, I think so. And I think if you find an LSU to make the playoff, I don't think that's a bad investment, like Tudor said. But I'll let Tudor get back to what his thoughts were there.
So the committee voted Tennessee 1 and Georgia 3 because obviously they're thinking matchup. Like if it ended today, right? They're not going to have Tennessee and Georgia play today, right? So, but I also think in the back of the head that Georgia can win this game and Tennessee. I think they see Tennessee not dropping as much as Georgia wouldn't have dropped. I really think that the committee is trying to save their SEC downs, right? And try to figure out the best possible way to keep them both in the top 4 after this weekend's game. Alabama, they put 6 because Alabama's going to make it if they went out, right? They're not worried about it. They could have put Alabama 10 for all that matter. I do not think Michigan and Ohio State can suffer a loss. Not with TCU sitting possibly undefeated and Clemson not possibly undefeated, Oregon and USC possibly running the table. They can't. One of them loses. I don't see a one-loss Big Ten champion getting this year unless, you talked about, Clemson losing and TCU losing and Oregon and USC losing, fine, and that's doable. But if we're talking about all these teams winning out, I don't see a one-loss Big Ten champ getting in this year. I could see Michigan and Ohio State getting in with that same scenario, though. If Clemson does lose the game and Alabama loses to LSU this week and TCU loses to Texas Tech or whatever, I could see a scenario where after this week, Ohio State's 1, Georgia's 2, Michigan's 3, and whoever is 4. I mean, if 4 would be Clemson, 1 out of Notre Dame, 4 would be Oregon or USC. Yeah. So there is a scenario where when it comes to Michigan State or Ohio State, Michigan, they could be 1-2, and yeah. they depending on how good the game is, could potentially both stay in because at the end of the day, it's about money, right? Who's going to bring more money to the playoffs? It's going to be Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, maybe. So, like, at the end of the day, if everybody's got one loss, Michigan only lost with a close loss to Ohio State, I think they get in. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think TCU is probably going to run the table, and Oregon or USC, one of them are going to run the table. So it's going to be wild. It's the first week. None of this is going to look like this in a couple weeks.
Definitely not.
You're definitely right on that. I had a bunch of questions for you both, but during your breakdowns, you've about answered just about everything. Let me ask you guys a question here on specifically Clemson and TCU. There's a lot of knocks on the ACC this year. They're not that good. They're not that deep. Miami, Florida State, and Syracuse is one of the top teams. How good are they? Same thing in the Big 12. We thought Texas was all that. Baylor was going to be great. TCU's next 2 games are in Texas and in Baylor. We know Clemson this week is in Notre Dame. Is there any chance Clemson or TCU run the table undefeated and don't get in the playoffs?
I don't think so. I think Clemson for sure. Clemson being at 4 says they're in. To me, I think Clemson at 4 says they're in. TCU, they've been left out before.
Yeah,
I just don't. Those games coming up. You're talking Texas, Baylor, maybe Kansas State again, maybe Baylor again. Yeah. Whoever they happen to face again in the title game. That's still some top 15 potential games. Kansas State up in there. So I think TCU will be okay. I also keep in mind Michigan, Ohio State. There's going to be a loss. Alabama, Georgia, Alabama, or Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama. If Alabama wins out, that means that they're facing Georgia or Tennessee, whoever doesn't lose. So one of those teams. So 2 of those 3 teams are going to have one more loss than they have now. So that's going to create a discussion. I just don't see how a power conference undefeated team goes in over a 1-loss team when it comes down to one spot. think we saw that with Cincinnati last year. We saw that with Notre Dame before that. I just think the undefeated means something to this playoff committee. All I can say is get me to 12 teams. Get me to 12 teams. When is that starting again?
I agree.
This is
Tudor,
gonna be
anything?
this is gonna be the year that people make the argument. I really see that happening. But there is a scenario about TCU and Clemson are both undefeated, Ian. And at that point, I don't know. I don't know. It depends on who win better towards the end of the season. What if Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship? They all got 1 losses. What's that? How did that shape up compared to an undefeated Ohio State or Michigan? Who then?
Yeah, they all beat each other, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
I
What
know
if
I-
Michigan
we
beats
talked about that
Ohio
earlier
State?
today.
And previously they've lost to Illinois. So there's
Yeah,
some scenarios that'll be crazy, and hopefully chaos will ensue and push this to a 12-team playoff.
I think we have no answers. Well, the 12 team got approved, right? It's in like 4 years.
Yeah, I
Maybe
think
they'll push
3.
it sooner.
Yeah, we got a while.
Not soon enough.
That scenario, I know I was talking to Tudor about that scenario earlier. It's like, what if this happens? Because then everybody beats everybody, and there's probably 3 of the 5 best teams in the nation. So what happens now? You got everyone else undefeated. It's like, that's a good question because I don't know, but they don't pay me to make those decisions. I just talk about them. So,
Awesome stuff.
yeah.
You want the
Before we
you
go
want the,
up,
you want the 4 best teams, then, right?
that's right.
Yeah.
Are they all better than Clemson right now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably. Before we go to both of you for your final thoughts, I want to thank everyone for joining us, not just this week, but every week. Once again, we are the Line Movers Network. Follow along on Twitter at @the_LM Network. You can follow Ian and the Tutor separately on Twitter. Great follows. Enjoy the games this week, guys and girls. For Ian Robbins, for the Tutor, I'm David Dorman. You guys are going to close us up. Tutor?
Yeah, as when these playoffs come out, and I follow Twitter, and of course there's Michigan fans crying about them not being 3 or 4. You know what? I'm just happy to be here, man. I remember, it's been 20 years of bad football, and and same for basketball. I was glad when we were in bubble talking basketball. Now what? We're a top 10 program again, and I'm just happy to be in this playoff discussion every year. It's fun to watch when your team is actually good, and if they lose, great. If they win, it's just great. It's just great. It makes college football fun again for me.
Yeah. And to your point before, Ian, Tudor, I agree with you. Everything you said in the Ohio State game will work everything out. But I agree with the committee on Michigan 5. If you want to play that out of conference schedule, that's your choice. But I'm not going to give you any credit for it. So Oregon should be ahead of them. Clemson should be ahead of them because they took on, legitimate Power 5, competition. Michigan didn't want to play anyone, but that's just my 2 cents. Ian,
UConn?
yeah, UConn,
Yeah.
UMass.
Yeah, real quick, a couple weeks ago we talked about such a great slate of college football. It didn't disappoint. It didn't disappoint. I think we're going to be on tap for another great slate of college football. Let's enjoy it. Sit back, enjoy. Let the chaos ensue.